Good evening, ladies. Welcome to Aspiring Women. Looks like all the aspiring women in town showed up tonight, so thank you. My name is Tammy, and I'm with Aspirus Riverview. Can you all hear me okay? I feel like I'm really loud. Am I too loud? Is it too loud? Okay. I'll ask the gal over by the door. They said it's a little too loud. Thank you. First, I want to introduce you. Oh, is there anyone who doesn't have a folder? Tracy's got a few that she can still distribute if you don't have one. Okay. Oh, thank you. And the first thing I wanted to do is let you know that we found a ring out in the lobby. And so I have it, and if you can, am I still loud enough? Yes, it is. It looks like it is.
Ask them what colors.
What colors? Do you know what the stone colors are?
Well, it's January before me.
Yes. Green, white, and red. Well, I'm glad we could get that back to you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Is this still okay as far as volume? Everyone's good in the back? Okay, good. Well, first I'd like to introduce you to the two gals you probably met out in the lobby. June and Sherry are here from the Career Closet, and thank you very much for the donations you brought tonight, and they're going to tell you where those donations will be used and who they will help.
Wow, you really delivered. You've got quite a load out there, and I thank you also very much. The goal of the Career Closet is to provide clothing for men, women, and students who are going for an interview or who have a new job and need some clothing, and they don't have the money. They're low-income or no-income people. And so you have helped us tonight to fulfill that goal, because we have lots of clothes out there that will go to very good use. Last year, in 2018, we served 392 men, women, and students. Of that number, 61 were women and 39% were men. Of that number, 278 of them had jobs already and just came for clothing for that job, and the remaining 114 were going for an interview. Their ages ranged from 15 to 72. "82% of them were from Wisconsin Rapids, the remainder from the area, including Nakusa, Port, some from Adams, Pittsville, even Stevens Point. We have been in operation since 2002, and we are a partner program with the United Way. Prior to that, we were working under a grant from the Family Center. So we've been around a long time, and with help like yours, we can stay around a lot longer. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Sherry now. She's going to tell you a little bit about what goes on there.
Hello, my name is Sherry Howard. I'm a licensed social worker. I'm also on the board, a board member, and a volunteer with the Career Closet. The Career Closet is located behind the Baker Street IGA, just in case you're looking for the location. And then we are completely run on volunteers. We have no paid staff. When people come to the Career Closet in search of work attire, they meet with a volunteer, they decide what they need, and we even have rooms for them to try on their clothing. The most requested clothing are business casual, work clothing such as black dress pants, white shirts and blouses, khaki pants, jeans, jackets, casual dress shirts in specific colors. They come in asking for like green or blue for the particular business that they are working at. And scrubs are also a really hot item, as well as safety shoes, which are like the steel-toed shoes for a lot of the men and women who are working in some of the factories around here. Our clothing is all donated from the community, from generous givers just like yourselves, and we are really much appreciative of that. Feel free to stop by and check us out, or check us out online. We actually have a Facebook page, which you can look up at the Career Closet of Wisconsin Rapids. If you're interested in volunteering, please let us know. Thank you so much for your donations today and helping us to meet our goals in serving our community. I hope we inspired you to clean out your closet. And if you have any more that you'd like to donate, maybe when you're going through all your clothes for spring cleaning, feel free to stop on by. Is there any questions that you guys might have at this time for us? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, June and Sherry. Now they have a lot of work to do loading everything up, but we're happy to give them that work. Give yourselves a hand too for all the people you're going to be helping. That's just wonderful. We really appreciate it. My next guest is Liz McCavo. She is our Director of Food and Nutrition Services at the hospital. And she is going to talk a little bit about the appetizers that were chosen for this evening, as well as some other hidden secrets.
Welcome to Aspiring Women, and what a nice crowd. As usual, the refreshments do reflect the topic that is being discussed. And today you're going to hear about the top 7 most hidden diseases in women. So I thought we should talk about ways you can get good nutrition by going through the top 7 ways to hide food into other things to make them healthy. And that's kind of what we did today. Right. So let's go through the top 7. The number 1 is the black bean brownies. Mashed black beans work wonderful in brownies. They work really great in chocolate cake because you can't tell they're in there because of the color. You can also get creative with black beans, and you can make a black bean dip. Or if you're mashing some black beans, season them up really good and put it on a baguette for a really healthy snack. Put a little cheese, a little sour cream on top, and you've got some hidden beans in a nice healthy snack. The mac and cheese today was made with cauliflower. This is just really one of my favorite recipes. You blend cooked cauliflower and make it nice and smooth. Add your cheese, and it makes a great base for mac and cheese. Another thing you can use cauliflower for is a pizza crust. You cook up your cauliflower, blend it up, add some eggs, and put it on the bottom of your pizza pan and make pizza. Much healthier alternative to the other crust that you may prefer. Number 3, it wasn't actually done here tonight, but it could be. You can add shredded carrot to any pulled meat. Works great in barbecues. At the hospital, we add shredded carrots to our meatloaf. It keeps it really nice and moist and adds a wonderful flavor. Plus, we're adding a little bit of vitamin E to that meatloaf. The 4th item is spiralized vegetable noodles with your favorite pasta sauce. This has become a whole lot easier. This is kind of a trendy food, but I did notice that in the last couple of weeks, I saw prepackaged spiralized noodles at Aldi's and at Cops. So you don't even have to make them yourself. You can buy them pre-made and add your favorite sauce, your spaghetti sauce, a marinara, an Alfredo sauce, however, whatever you would like to add to get that vegetable in. The one thing I do, which is is number 5, is I cheat. I start with a jar sauce, but I always add a package of my homegrown tomatoes that I froze, and fresh mushrooms, and if I've got any other vegetables that I want to use up, I throw them into the spaghetti sauce. Makes for a nice chunky garden pasta sauce. And you get those vegetables in, and if you've got a picky family eater, picky family member, they may not even know that those items are in there. Okay. Number 6 is add diced fresh sweet potatoes to your chili. Well, just give it a little sweet tang, a little bit different taste. But if you dice them up pretty small, no one's going to know what they are. And number 7, this is an oldie, but a goodie. You can use applesauce in place of fat when making cookies or quick breads or cakes or other baked desserts. It's a 1-to-1. You substitute it 1-to-1. So if it calls for a half cup of oil or a half cup of butter, you add a half cup of applesauce. And your item will be a little moist. Quick breads tend to be a little bit heavier, but the flavor is fantastic and you've just gotten rid of all that fat. So, you have it. 7 ways to hide healthy foods. Now we can learn about the 7 diseases. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, for all those tips. Now for, I guess, our main attraction, the 2 gals who have come to speak with us tonight about our top 7 most hidden diseases in women. We have Florence Nilitz. She is a physician assistant at Aspirus Riverview Clinic in both Wisconsin Rapids and Nakusa, correct? And Flo got her Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point in clinical laboratory science, and she actually worked in our hospital lab for 13 years as a medical technologist while she was getting her advanced degree as a physician assistant certified, which she got at the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health. And she's a native of Milladore, and she enjoys music and spending time with her 4 children. And she is joined tonight by Dr. Abigail Lewis, who is a family medicine specialist at Aspirus Doctors Clinic here in Wisconsin Rapids. And Dr. Lewis earned her medical degree at Mercer University School of Medicine in Macon, Georgia. And she did a residency at the Medical College of Wisconsin Fox Valley Family Medicine Residency Program in Appleton. She is board certified in family medicine, and she cares for patients of all ages, as does Florence. And she has a special interest in pediatrics, women's health, and whole family care. And in her spare time, she likes archery, crafting, sports, and spending time with her family. If you fall in love with either of these gals tonight, they both are now accepting new patients. And so we do have their, what we call their little bio cards, their intro cards on the table out in the hallway, and you can feel free to pick up one about them and give them a call if you decide you want to do that. But I guess I'll turn it over now to the gals to share with you the most hidden diseases in women.
joining us tonight. Florence and I are going to kind of tag team our way through this. And so some of these will be things you've heard more about, and some of them are not, but we tried to pick things that we see all the time in clinic, and then also that pertain a little bit more specifically to women as well. So the first thing is, gender does affect disease. The initial studies we did in medicine were all based off of men, and then we tried to apply those same results to women, and we found that that didn't quite work. And that kind of proves something that I think all of us have known as women for a long time, that we're just a little bit different than our male counterparts, and that plays out in the health part as well. So prostate cancer is limited to men. There are diseases just like that for women with ovarian. That makes sense. We have a little bit different parts. But there are diseases that occur in both men and women, but they affect us differently. And so we can have different symptoms, different prognosis based off of that. So the topics that we're going to talk about tonight are just 7. The first one is polycystic ovarian syndrome, osteoporosis, depression, diabetes mellitus, or diabetes is what most of us call it. There's more than one form of it. Rheumatoid arthritis, or RA, heart disease, and then hypothyroidism. So Flo's going to start us out with polycystic.
So I'm sure all of you, or most of you, can recognize the celebrity. We have a celebrity that we've posted with each one of these diseases. And Dolly Parton has polycystic ovarian syndrome. I think a big part of polycystic ovarian syndrome is that a lot of us may have this and it doesn't manifest until something happens in our lives to make us realize that our cycles might be out of control, or that maybe there is a family history, but with family history comes the fact that it has to be shared. And a lot of people don't want to share what they're going through. And so if you're going through an abnormal part of your life, which includes having a menstrual cycle, and you realize that that's not how it should be, it may be once every month, once every 3 months, the problem can be PCOS. And PCOS is something that stems from hormone imbalance, and it causes problems with your menstrual period. And some women then realize when they want to get pregnant that it's harder to get pregnant because your hormones aren't regulated, and part of trying to conceive is to make sure that you can have the right hormones in place at the right time. So another aspect of this is, as you get older, if you don't also take care of your PCOS, it can lead to diabetes and heart disease, another hidden thing. So the typical school book line is a string of pearls seen on an ultrasound of an ovarian, of an ovary. And that's what ovarian cysts look like with polycystic ovarian syndrome. The cysts themselves aren't harmful. Some people say that they have pain when their ovarian cysts might burst. But the problem is that if there's cysts growing in the ovaries, there is no release of the ovary. And if you don't have that release, then your body doesn't then also have the period, the menses. And the lining of the uterus keeps growing because your body is still making that lining as well. And the sooner that you can find out about this, the better your chances are of conceiving, and the better your chances are of knowing how to control the hormones. And like I said, PCOS seems to run in families. I can attest to this with my family, is people don't want to share some of the things that they know that are going on with their health. And then when young women go to the doctor and they're asked about their family history, they don't know, and I didn't know about my family history. But I think another important thing is that even as late as the 70s, this wasn't a known diagnosis. So women even that were having difficulties getting pregnant in the 70s or 80s didn't know that this could be a possibility of why they might not have been able to conceive. But also diabetes plays a role in this, because if the sugars in your body aren't being regulated correctly, hormones are made by sugars and fats, and those hormones that are made by fats or sugars can get out of balance and become overproduced. Some people come in and they may say, I can't get rid of my acne. I always have acne. I've tried everything. I've tried every topical, I've tried every oral, and I've just been told I'll have acne all the time. Another thing is excessive hair. If women have hair growth, especially on their face, more than usual. And depression can sometimes also stem from this as well.
So the next one we're going to talk about is osteoporosis. The reason that we picked this one is because this affects a lot of women. About 30% of all women will develop osteoporosis in their lifetime. That's about 80 million people in the United States if you look at it. And Sally Field is an actress who had it. She had no idea. She ended up having a fracture just by hitting her hand, I think it was on the wall. And she didn't know why, and they found out then that her bones were really thin. So this is something that can run in families, but it also is something that naturally happens as we get older in life, and we'll go through that a little bit more. So what is osteoporosis? It literally just means porous bone. So osteo is the Latin word for bone, and porosis means pore. Kind of makes sense. And it's just the density of the bone is not as thick, which makes your quality of the bone not quite as strong. That increased porosity makes it more fragile, and that's how you have the increased fracture risk. If you have a fracture, as we get older, that's a leading issue with your quality of life long term. So this is something, if we catch it earlier, it means you keep your independence longer and you can stay at home, as opposed to dealing with a lot of the chronic effects from this. So I don't think we talk about this quite enough. Looking at osteoporosis, what causes it? In about your 20s is when we kind of finish our development. So you meet your peak bone mass then, and it's kind of all downhill from there, which is what probably somebody said about their 20s before. But you're kind of reprocessing your bone, so you have a little bit of growth, but you also have an equal or more amount of destruction. And so we're constantly rebuilding as a response to our exercise and our weight, but we're never going to get higher than where we were in our 20s. After menopause, the loss of estrogen causes that bone density to decrease even more rapidly, because that helps support our bone growth. And so that's why, as we get older, we see this more frequently in women. And then men don't have these changes in estrogen, so their curves, if they have osteoporosis, which is much less likely in general, is kind of a straight line, versus ours kind of slowly goes up and then skyrockets as we get older. This is a picture of normal bone on the right versus osteoporotic bone on the left. You can kind of see that you just have more space. It looks more spongy between from one side to the other. And then this is another picture of it pulled from your vertebrae, which is what we look at in the test we use to screen for osteoporosis. The top picture is normal bone. You can see it's almost completely solid, as opposed to the bottom one, you almost have these strings with a lot of open space. That's why just a little bit off moment that you can have a bone fracture in your back, or that's why people say that you didn't fall and broke your hip, you broke your hip and then you fell. It's because the bone breaks too easily that just the wrong motion can do it. Symptoms of osteoporosis are tricky because most of the time there are none. This is why we recommend routine screening for all women at age 65 so that we can catch it before it becomes an issue. But there are other things that increase your risk factors too, and that's why usually you know what those are if you have them. Things like rheumatoid arthritis, chronic treatment with steroids, we do that for a lot of different diseases. And that would be a reason to look earlier. Also, if you have a family history, which is what Florence was talking about, it's important to know that this occurs early, then you can know maybe you're someone who should get tested before age 65. Otherwise, you can have back pain, which is usually due to a collapsed vertebrae or a fracture. You can have a loss of height over time that we tend to sloop more and more and more forward. That's caused by your vertebrae just not being as big as they once were. You can have a stooped posture, and then a bone fracture like Sally Field that can be in your arm. It doesn't have to be your back. We kind of all hear about the back and the hips, but it can really be anywhere. My own grandmother had a fracture in her arm, and her osteoporosis was so bad it never healed. So she had a broken arm from the time she was 78 to the time she died when she was 94. So this is something that you really need to be aware of, and know that there are treatment options to reverse it too if you have it. So that's why when we screen for things, we don't screen for things we can't fix. So that's something to know, kind of a little bit about osteoporosis. And then
Depression is our third topic today. A lot of people that come in and have depression say that they don't feel happy, but they fake it to make it, which means that they look happy and things are still just not going right. And Catherine Zeta-Jones is a celebrity that had dealt with just that for many years. Depression is a medical condition, and it causes feelings of sadness or loss of interest in activities that you once enjoyed. There are several causes for depression, biochemistry. So there is a chemical that we found called serotonin, and it is proven that serotonin levels can, if decreased, can cause more depression. So that level may be decreased just because of genetics, or that level may be decreased because you've been exposed to things during your lifetime, or that level may just be not where it should be for you. And a lot of medications now target that serotonin and try to have more serotonin available, because the more serotonin there is, it's proven that the better your mood will be. Symptoms of depression can be feeling sad, loss of interest or pleasure in activities once enjoyed, changes in appetite, either overeating or undereating, not getting enough sleep or sleeping too much, not wanting to get out of bed or get dressed in the morning, not having the energy to do things that you once could do, and feeling that your life is not worth living. A lot of people also aren't able to complete tasks throughout the day because they're always coming back to those feelings of sadness, and it overwhelms them, so they cannot do activities again that they once did before.
So I talk a lot about diabetes, both in my clinic. So one of the things that I run across are some of the things that I wanted to make sure we talk about today. Paula Deen is probably one of the most famous people with type 2 diabetes. She had a real problem coming forward with this because there's such a social stigma against it. But it's kind of not surprising if you think about the buttery foods that she typically serves. So it's one of the reasons to use the hidden ways of sneaking in other healthy stuff too, maybe to substitute some of that out. Women with diabetes in particular is a little bit less likely to get diabetes than men. It's like a 55% of men versus 45% of women, but women have more risk with it. So if you have diabetes as a woman, you have a higher cardiovascular risk, and that basically means you're a lot more likely to have a stroke or a heart attack. What is diabetes? It's a condition where you can't respond to the blood sugar that's in your body. Type 1 diabetes is where you can't make any insulin because the cells in the pancreas are destroyed by your autoimmune system. That's a lot more rare than type 2 diabetes, which is from insulin resistance. A lot of us have heard about insulin resistance, but it's different to kind of understand what it is. And I've even found in my diabetic patients that they don't really know what that means. So this is kind of a picture to look at it. So in the top right, you have glucose, which is a fancy word for blood sugar, that basically is from the foods you eat, and you absorb it from your stomach and intestines into your bloodstream, which is what is the tube in the middle. Your body senses that you have an increased level of blood sugar, so your pancreas starts to make or release more insulin, and that's kind of what the green little dots are. and that goes through your bloodstream to two different places. One of them goes into your muscle cells, which is on the bottom right side, and it's trying to get to the muscle cells to take up that blood sugar so they can use them for activity. So everything requires power, and it's kind of what's powering the cells in your muscles to have the energy they need to do their job. The other place that blood sugar usually goes is to our liver. What our liver does is use that blood sugar to help put it in storage for later. So that's what helps us go in between meals, so we're not just stuck eating all the time, but allows us to have 3 meals a day and also survive overnight. The liver is what maintains our blood sugar levels based off of what it has stored. So it's a great share. Your body's really smart. It's doing this without us even having to think about it. It's quite amazing. What happens with insulin resistance is you need more of those green dots to trigger the receptors on those cells, whether they're in the muscle or the liver, in order for them to let the blood sugar into the cells. If that's not working, then the blood sugar gets stuck in the bloodstream, and that's where it becomes destructive. So if you think of, a lot of us have made rock candy with kids where you put a lot of sugar and water and you stir up and you put a stick in and you weigh back, it crystallizes. Well, those crystals are hard, right? Those are destroying your cells over time, and that's where the damage from diabetes comes from, is basically the crystallization of blood sugar in your vessels. So this is a little bit more picture to try to look. We think about being overweight being associated with diabetes, but it's not the only thing that does it. It's actually very highly genetic, and there's a lot of arguments. Is it nature versus nurture? Is it because you were raised in the family, this is the way we eat, these are our activity patterns, versus these are the genes that are passed to the family as well? And most likely it's a combination of both, but there have been several different genes that have been associated with a much higher risk of diabetes, which is why you can get it even if you're not overweight and taking good care of yourself. So if you have too much food or too much animal fat, along with not getting enough exercise, and one of the genes that can cause either greater insulin resistance or the genes that make you more hungry, those are great ones to have, right? They make you more overweight, which that weight itself, fat tissue works as an organ in our body. So it both increases your estrogen levels, so you have higher rates of having issues with things like period and menopause, but it also tells your body that I've got stores already of energy, that's what fat is. Then it increases your resistance to the insulin because you've already got your stores made. And so your body's not responding to it because the insulin trigger is a little bit off because it's not following the normal pattern that it would. So then your pancreas either starts to make more insulin, but you can have a set of genes that makes your pancreatic cells not work as well too. So that can lead to diabetes, that normally you'd be able to be doing just fine, but all of a sudden your insulin can't keep up. The other thing is you can get fatty deposits in your pancreas. You can get fatty deposits anywhere, in your liver, in your heart, in your throat. But the ones in your pancreas can be destructive and make it not work as well, and so you're not making enough insulin there. Eventually, your insulin levels can't keep up with the demand of the blood sugars. Your receptors aren't working as well because they're being targeted over and over because of the higher blood sugars. So the signaling pathway kind of gets shut off, and your body doesn't know what to do, and then it leaves the blood sugar where it is in the blood as opposed to letting it go into the cells itself, and then you have diabetes. This is not like a hard and fast, you have diabetes or you don't. This is all a spectrum. So as your insulin resistance goes up, that's why we have the pre-diabetic area and then we have the diabetic, but very equally by reversing some of these trends, you can go back the other way so long as your pancreas has not been destroyed to the point it's not making its own insulin anymore. And that can happen in both people who have type 1 and type 2 diabetes, just from different sources. So the different symptoms of diabetes, kind of on the left, is more of the symptoms before you've been diagnosed, versus on the right are the late kind of symptoms of diabetes. You can have blurred vision because the blood sugars get into your eyes and they change the liquid that we have in our eyeballs so it doesn't look quite as much. If you correct the blood sugar, your vision gets better. You can have slow healing of wounds because the sugar impairs your clogging disorders, your clogging cells that have all the things we need to heal. You can be constantly hungry because your body is not getting what it needs to for the cells. Yeah, you've got the stores that you need, but your insulin receptors are not able to work as well, and you can't produce enough insulin to utilize those stores because you got all the blood sugar stuck in the blood. It's not going to the cells where it's needed, So you actually gain weight because you're hungry, because your body's trying to get what it needs. It's kind of a vicious cycle. You can have frequent urination. One of the ways that your body can get rid of the blood sugar when it can't go where it needs to is by peeing it out. Your kidneys filter it through, but then that can cause issues too because the sugar is very irritating to your bladder. So you can have more frequent UTIs and just burning with peeing from it, as well as just going all the time. And then you also can have numbness of your hands and feet that's due to damage to the nerves from the blood sugar. Long-term diabetes is associated with a much higher risk of stroke, blindness, heart disease, kidney disease, neuropathy, amputation, if you don't treat it. So what we do is we look for this ahead of time, just like osteoporosis. It's one of those things we're keeping an eye on, so you know, oh, I may have the genes, I'm doing good at other point, but this is the time that I really need to pay attention to my lifestyle, making sure I'm getting my exercise and looking at my diet. There are plenty of people that no matter how much we do that, you're still going to get diabetes, but then we know we're not missing it because you may not have had some of those symptoms, and you can be treated well and prevent. It's one of the leading contributors besides tobacco that we have an influence on one of the leading killers of women, which is heart disease we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Rheumatoid arthritis. Women make up 3/4 of rheumatoid arthritis and usually peak between the ages of 40 and 60. Arthritis is an inflammation in a joint, and inflammation usually causes swelling, redness, warmth, and pain. Rheumatoid arthritis affects both sides of the body, such as both hands, both wrists, and both knees. This is intricate in the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis versus osteoarthritis. So osteoarthritis is the breakdown of the joints, but it's because of wear and tear over time. Osteoarthritis is your body just decreasing joint use because of the physical effects. Rheumatoid arthritis is that your body is actually attacking itself and making your body less useful. And rheumatoid arthritis can also affect the skin, eyes, lungs, heart, blood, and nerves because it is an autoimmune disease. So it doesn't just affect your hands, but it can also affect your organs as well. So the immune system attacks the synovium, which is the fluid that is lining the membranes between the joints. And it actually results in that thickening and the swelling and the redness that people see outwardly. Tendons and ligaments that hold the joints together weaken and stretch. So the picture here, you can see where the fingers are pointing outward. That is directly correlated to the fact that the tendons and ligaments no longer act as they should. And so they cannot hold the fingers straight. And genetics, again, is usually part of the issue. People that have rheumatoid arthritis have stiffness, especially in the morning. I remember one of my grandmothers would knead dough every morning so that she could use her hands. Because by noon, if she kneaded dough in the morning, she was able to at least get through the rest of the day. And you'll also see the disfiguration on both sides of the hands together. Pain, inflammation inside the joint becomes tender, and over time, the use of the range of motion is not there anymore. And you can actually feel the heat coming from those joints through the skin.
So Rosie O'Donnell suffered from a heart attack at age 49. We usually think about heart disease being something related to men, but the truth is it doesn't treat us separately, it just treats us differently. For both men and women, heart disease is the leading killer in our nation, and it kills 1 in 4 women from heart disease. So we hear all this news about breast cancer and screening and mammograms and what we need to do, and lung cancer if you were a smoker, but no one really talks about heart disease in women, but it's killing most of us, more so than any other disease by itself. Heart disease is kind of a nebulous thing. You kind of wonder what all composes it, and it's kind of anything that contributes to your circulatory system, which is your blood vessels. Usually they're narrow and blocked, and we'll go through what that looks like a little bit more. It can cause a heart attack or stroke, and it also can cause arrhythmias in your heart rate that can lead to pain and heart attacks as well. So looking at the heart, it can be caused by high cholesterol, high blood pressure, smoking, excessive alcohol intake, diabetes, having a sedentary lifestyle, obesity. Sleep apnea is a big cause that we don't know as much about because people don't talk about their snoring because usually they're not the ones that know that they snore. And then in rare cases, autoimmune diseases and infections can do this, but this is less than 1%. Most of them are from higher up, and you can basically look at it as anything that can cause damage in your body. We went through how blood sugar can do it. Smoking, we've heard a lot about how that can cause damage to your vessels. High blood pressure makes little rips in your blood vessel from the pressure. That happens normally, but then you have an abnormal healing process because it's happening more frequently. All of this kind of goes together. This is a picture of the different kinds. So I believe it's up on the top left is what a normal artery looks like. You have blood flow going through it. That's what the little arrow is supposed to represent, and nice thin walls with it. Down below it can show one of the responses to high blood pressure, increased pressure, so your body makes more muscle in your arteries to deal with this. The problem is it doesn't always make it on the outside. Usually it's the inside of the vessel, so your vessel gets more narrow. That is what we're actually listening for when we hear your blood pressure. As we pump up the cuff, we cut off the flow, and we're listening for that narrow flow to come back. What level does that have to be that we're listening for? The higher it is, the more noise it makes sooner, which is why we hear it at that particular point. You can see if you have less area for the blood flow to go through, the same amount of blood still has to be processed, and that's what causes the little rips and pressure of that lining that we call the intima lining of the vessel. Your body has a repair mechanism for it. It's kind of like a scab. We use cholesterol everywhere in our body. It's on the outside of every single cell that we have. So not all cholesterol is bad, but when you have too much of it, you have an overbuild of the kind of scab that your body forms. So it notices, hey, there's a little rip here. We need to put a little blanket over this so that we don't bleed into our arteries. So a little scab of cholesterol is put in. The more LDL or bad cholesterol you have, the more fluffy, because it's low density, so think of it as almost like cloud light. You're going to have bigger plaques, and that's what causes an issue. The more high density, or the good cholesterol that you might have heard about, is smaller, so it makes smaller scabs. And it's normal to have a version of them. You have more low density after you first eat, and then it kind of gets used over time up to making the high density. But that's kind of why high cholesterol can attribute to all of this too. And the bottom, you have what it looks like after a long period of time. This happens more in big vessels because there's just more space, so you can have bigger plaques resulting. And that yellowish area is all kind of gelled up cholesterol. And so it kind of looks like scrambled eggs in your arteries, but it's harder. As that gets narrower, you get to about 70% blockage before you can feel any different from it. So you can be having this going on and have absolutely no idea from it. So even though you could have your arteries blocked almost all of the way, you could feel just fine and not be having any chest pain. And then because they're big and fluffy plaques, one from higher up breaks off because these are not very stable. They come down and they block that small area because it's littler, it's easier to block, and then you have the heart attack or you have the stroke. If we look at it, the diseases of a heart attack or stroke, it depends on what you're having. Heart attack in women, you can have that chest pain, the indigestion, heartburn kind of sensation, but that left-sided chest pain is much more specific to men. Those studies that show that association were conducted primarily in men in their middle age and have not been shown as applicable to women, especially as we get older. Our nerves are wired differently. It's far more common as a woman to have heartburn as your presenting symptom, or jaw pain, or arm pain, or pain even on your stomach on the other side, than it is to have the chest pain with it. So it's something to pay attention to in your body and know that you know, I just don't feel right, that can be enough reason to go in and talk to your doctor about it, because we're not always going to have that pain right here on this left side of our chest that feels like an elephant crushing it that we've heard about over the years. An arrhythmia, or that's when you have changes in your heart rate, can feel like fluttering in your chest. You can sometimes get this normally with stress, but it's more of a danger sign if it happens when you're at rest, and it's something else to think about, specifically if it's causing discomfort in your chest. Heart failure is when your heart itself has stopped pumping as well due to lack of blood flow over time, and that can cause shortness of breath. You can get swelling in your legs, and you can have mild heart failure and never have known that you actually had a heart attack because it was a small one that you thought was just a little bit of heartburn that day. The other side of this looks at how do I know I need to get treatment that I might be having a stroke, and this is an easy acronym to remember. Obviously, we all know people who have had strokes long term and what that looks like, but the first thing it looks like is you start to see some facial droop, or one turns down a little bit longer than the other, and that's why they can't quite talk well because their lips aren't working the same. The next one is looking that they start to feel some arm driftiness. So they hold up their arm, but they can't keep it there. It just falls down, or they feel like they can't walk well from the similar reason. And then the last part is when they start to have the speech that, I mean, all of this kind of makes sense. You take it together. And then last part is you should take them to the ER. That's what the T is. And then last but not least,
So the thyroid is an organ in your body that I like to think of as the thermostat. Everybody has a regulator, and that's your thyroid, okay? And if your thyroid isn't able to function, the thermostat isn't working, everything goes haywire. I'm gaining weight and my hair is falling out. What is hypothyroidism? Just what I said. The thyroid doesn't produce enough of that thyroid hormone. And Oprah is the celebrity that we have today that also suffers from hypothyroidism. A lot of things can cause hypothyroidism. Autoimmune disease, people that have had cancer and receive radiation treatment, the thyroid absorbs a lot of radiation and therefore can stop working. Other surgeries that you've had around your thyroid can then impact the thyroid itself. Some people are on medications which get absorbed by the thyroid even though they're not meant to treat the thyroid, and then that alters the way the thyroid functions. And then iodine deficiency. Iodine deficiency in the United States is not as much of a problem anymore. I don't know if any of you remember growing up and getting an iodine tablet in school. I was told they were very tasty. Today they have iodine in all salt, so I think even if you go to a fast food restaurant once a month, you probably get your dose of iodine that you need for the whole year right there. Risk factors for hypothyroidism are being a female, over the age of 60, again, having a family history of this condition, having an autoimmune disease, and then some women who are pregnant also experience problems with their thyroid. Again, the thyroid regulates things, and pregnancy seems to cause an imbalance throughout our whole body, and the thyroid is not immune to that either. Some people will say that they feel a lot of fatigue. They definitely can't handle the cold as well as they used to. Bowel movements are a lot more hard and less frequent. Their skin is very dry because the thyroid isn't functioning. It's not allowing you to metabolize things the way that you should, and therefore you gain weight. A goiter, which is an enlargement on the thyroid, can be noticed. So some people will say, my neck just seems a little larger than it used to be. I can't remember things as well as I used to. And again, the irregular menses, because that regulates your periods as well.
so there are some honorable mentions at the end here. Urinary tract infections, it burns. If you're having frequent urinary symptoms, feeling pain, even pain when you have sex, you could be having a chronic UTI. It gets more common as we get older. We don't have estrogen supporting the blood flow to the vaginal tissues as much, and it all plays together. Celiac disease, this is what people talk about going off gluten for, which is a protein found in wheat. It can cause indigestion, heartburn, cramping, weight loss. I had a friend whose daughter had it. She dropped from the 90th percentile down to the 5th in a month. So it can be very severe, but it also can be more insidious over time. That all of a sudden I feel off. I have all this heartburn. It's not getting better with over-the-counter meds. What could be going on? Hepatitis C, especially in baby boomers. That was before we knew how to screen this out from different blood transfusions and things like that. The symptoms you see here are more related to chronic liver failure. So the yellow eyes, exhaustion, no appetite. But you can screen for this ahead of time if you qualify. It's based on the age ranges, again, mainly baby boomer generation. And we have a treatment for it that's pretty simple. And so we can prevent you from getting into liver failure. Lupus is another one that almost any symptom you can name, we could say could be from lupus, because it does a lot in your body. It's got a very high family history component, but you get a characteristic butterfly rash on your face and you have joint pain all over. This usually affects women in their 20s. At first is when you first start to have symptoms from it. It's not really something that usually comes on later in life. Multiple sclerosis is another disease of your 20s usually. Some women have one episode where all of a sudden they can't walk, and then they never have another one again. It's due to inflammation of your spinal cord. Other women have a much more progressive course. It's a smaller amount, but it's important to know that it's there, and it's something that we think about. Irritable bowel syndrome. This is one, if you go on WebMD, you'll convince yourself you have it, because it's basically intermittent episodes of constipation or diarrhea in response to stress, but it's to the point that it's interfering with your daily life, that you really can't function, you can't do the things you want to do, it's difficult to be at work. And then cancer, obviously, breast, cervical, colon cancer can all kill. You usually don't have any symptoms before you get to that point. But we can find them before they do, and that's something why we have the routine screening programs. So how to find help. This is kind of, I guess, your catch-all phrase. If you have questions about this or think it might be you should talk to your own primary care doctor. But both Florence and I are here if you have any particular questions for a little bit as well. And thank you for having us.
If there's any questions, do we have any questions at all for the else? Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you tell us a little bit about the calcium storing capacity in terms of...
You might have to repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question data to use it responsibly to have good guidelines. So the part of it is you're going to see a lot of recommendations from cardiologists because this is obviously what they do all the time, but we don't have a big population study looking at it to show how do we really use this for prevention. It's a great one to use if you have really high cholesterol, but you want to know how blocked are my arteries. I've not been tolerant to taking a statin medicine, or I'm not sure I want to take a medicine. It kind of gives you another point to just make that decision off of. If your score is 0, it's very, very reassuring. The issue we get in there is how often do we repeat this to know that your score is still there, and that's where you're going to have to talk with your doctor based off of your specific risk factors to decide. It's not recommended as a primary screening device for that reason. It's mainly used to help you make treatment decisions for their, so in some other cases they've had people with chest pain, but the cath just didn't look quite right, and to see what else may be going on, sometimes we use it there. Or someone who has kidney disease that we can't do a heart catheterization, which is where they use contrast to look and see how blocked your heart is. It's another way of looking. And there, yeah, sorry.
So you would rely on it enough if you have a 0 that you would tell your doctor?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could. The big thing to know with that is that just it looks at your heart, and you can have peripheral vascular disease that's just at risk that you're not going to catch on that, but it's in general a good deposition of what your whole body looks like. It's just not a perfect test. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Would it be correct to say that lack of sunshine would also contribute to depression?
Absolutely. So 1/3 of all Wisconsinites are vitamin D deficient right now. And so vitamin D is a big player in our mood. In addition, a lot more people of Germanic Norwegian descent, which is also Polish too, I'm Polish. We just don't process vitamin D as well. And so a lot of women who are postmenopausal, you don't have estrogen supporting the absorption of that hormone, we should be taking it. But there are plenty of people who are vitamin D deficient, don't know it. If they took a vitamin D supplement, I'm not talking like 1,000 units, just 1 or 2, you'll feel better because your body's functioning the way it's supposed to hormonally. All right.
Would you say plant-based estrogen would be as effective as the other kind?
So it depends on what you're treating with it. The most common plant form of estrogen is based off of soy that we get from it. The issue has to do with how you're absorbing it. Any form of estrogen can increase your risk. So if you are postmenopausal more than 5 years, you should not be starting a systemic estrogen therapy. If you've been on estrogen therapy for more than 10 years, you should think about stopping it because that's where the studies have all showed that you have the increased risk of heart attack or stroke. That being said, if you have really severe perimenopausal symptoms, it's a great use there. I usually start with the more natural pieces of it, but it really depends on what your symptoms are. If you're just having hot flashes, we can manage that without any hormones at all, plant-based or not. The bigger issue with the plant-based is you can try to adjust your diet, which is great, but you don't know exactly what dose you're getting. And some women are really sensitive to the fluctuations in it, and that's more of the hard part with it, but I do both.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes?
Can you explain a little bit more about osteopenia?
Yeah.
And if vitamin D helps?
So osteopenia, and a little bit more about that, that was the question, and then what do you do about it? Osteopenia is the baby form of osteoporosis. So it's when you've had your DEXA scan for scanning and it shows that your T-score, is what they'll tell you, is not quite less than 2, that's osteoporosis, but it's in that 1 to 2 zone. It basically means that you're on a spectrum, that you're not quite where your bones are so porous that we tell you that you're at a high risk of having fractures, but you're on that pathway. Vitamin D is something that can help, especially if you're vitamin D deficient. And so if you have osteopenia, you should be getting your vitamin D level checked to see, do you need the high doses or can you make sure with just the regular supplement levels would be good enough to help with prevention. Vitamin D in itself and calcium are good to support it, but they're not the only things that can. Exercise is really good too because you're weight bearing on your bones then and you're helping them trigger that they need to be rebuilding versus the vitamin D and calcium don't naturally do that by themselves. The only things that do are kind of the treatment things we use for osteoporosis, but believe it or not, we try not to start people on medicine until they really do need it, so we try to protect from that too. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you take too much vitamin D?
So there's a lot of differences in opinion on this. I kind of stand, in case you can't tell, that we should be doing vitamin D. Part of that's being a women's health. I also did extra training in integrative medicine and nutrition to try to piece this out. But there are studies on both sides of the boards here. Really about that 5,000 to 6,000 unit range, below that is probably safe for everyone. If you have a risk or have had kidney stones, you're going to be a little bit higher risk. You should start down at the lower side for replacement because that's the biggest risk of vitamin D. It tells your body to process through calcium in your kidneys different. And the biggest thing in kidney stones is calcium. And so if you get to the higher doses, you can have problems there. For women who are breastfeeding, not very much vitamin D gets through the breast milk. So that's one of the few times that taking the higher doses without testing is safe because your goal is to try to get both that you're depleting your stores from having a kid, because it can wipe you out a little, but also that your baby's getting enough that they don't have to take supplements too. But you have to get at least 6,400 units, and usually it's a lot easier to take a 10,000 unit pill, which is one, as opposed to like you have to do 3 or 4 different ones daily. Pregnant women have, and newborns, they have enough to deal with without taking 4 pills a day. So.
With decreased estrogen, would taking supplemental calcium kind of fight off osteoporosis?
It's hard to know if it's truly going to prevent it, but most postmenopausal women feel better taking vitamin D, a calcium supplement, and a magnesium supplement. It has to do with the estrogen changes in your body. Any other takers? All right, thank you guys. Have a good night.